The thing is, we can't do this stuff because, like we used to, do it all the time. Right.
They were the architects of hard rock, filling stadiums with anthems like Smoke on the Water and Highway Star. But behind the thunderous riffs and roaring crowds, Deep Purple was crumbling from within. At the center of the collapse stood Ian Gillan, the band's iconic voice, and Ritchie Blackmore, its fiery guitarist. For years they created magic together, until it all exploded in chaos. At 75, Gillan finally admitted, "I had to walk away." What drove one of rock's greatest singers to abandon the band that made him famous? Ian Gillan's journey with Deep Purple began in 1969, when he replaced Rod Evans as the band's lead singer. With his soaring vocal range and powerful stage presence, Gillan helped define what would become known as the Mark II lineup, featuring Ritchie Blackmore, Roger Glover, John Lord, and Ian Pace. Together they recorded some of the most influential albums in rock history, including In Rock in 1970 and Machine Head in 1972. The chemistry on stage was undeniable, but off-stage tensions brewed. Blackmore, known for his perfectionism and fiery temperament, often clashed with Gillan's free-spirited approach. Still, the band pushed through, driven by commercial success and a relentless touring schedule. By 1973, however, the cracks were showing. Exhaustion, pressure, and constant arguments boiled over. Gillan quit Deep Purple at the height of their fame, citing burnout and frustration. He later recalled, "I felt like I'd lost myself in that machine. I had to escape." His departure marked the first major fracture in the group's history, though it wouldn't be the last. After years apart, the band stunned the world in 1984 with a reunion that many thought would never happen. The album Perfect Strangers was hailed as a return to form, and fans flocked to see the classic lineup together again. But while the music thrived, the old rivalries quickly resurfaced, setting the stage for another storm. The release of Perfect Strangers in 1984 was both a triumph and a warning sign. The album went platinum, and the subsequent world tour was one of the most successful of the decade. Fans couldn't get enough of seeing Gillan and Blackmore side by side again, trading energy and charisma on stage. But behind the curtain, the same issues that tore them apart in the 1970s began to re-emerge. Blackmore demanded control over musical direction, pushing for precision and discipline. Gillan, by contrast, thrived on spontaneity and raw emotion. Their creative visions collided, often leading to heated arguments during rehearsals and even mid-tour. The situation only worsened as the reunion stretched on. Gillan admitted later that the atmosphere within the band became toxic. It stopped being fun, and when the fun is gone, the music suffers, he explained. The tension grew so intense that by 1989, Gillan walked away once again, leaving fans heartbroken and the band fractured. For many, the Perfect Strangers era symbolized both the power and the fragility of Deep Purple. The reunion proved their magic was still alive, but it also exposed just how impossible it was for Gillan and Blackmore to coexist for long. By the late 1980s, the uneasy truce between Ian Gillan and Ritchie Blackmore had reached its breaking point. While Perfect Strangers gave fans hope that the band's chemistry had returned, the reality behind the scenes told a different story. Gillan and Blackmore clashed over almost everything: set lists, songwriting, and even stage presence. One infamous flashpoint came during the House of Blue Light sessions in 1987. Gillan favored a looser, more soulful style, while Blackmore pushed for sharp precision and darker riffs. The tension boiled over in the studio, where arguments frequently halted recording. Gillan later admitted, "We weren't talking about music anymore. We were just fighting." Things grew worse on tour. Blackmore, notorious for his unpredictable behavior, sometimes refused to go on stage if conditions didn't meet his standards. Gillan, known for his humor and spontaneity, tried to diffuse the tension, but often found himself on the receiving end of Blackmore's ire. The contrast between Gillan's flamboyant energy and Blackmore's brooding intensity was both the band's magic and its poison. By 1989, Gillan had had enough. He walked away from Deep Purple once again, this time amid open hostility. To fans, it seemed unthinkable that the voice of Smoke on the Water could leave his own band. But for Gillan, the choice was survival: stay and let the bitterness consume him, or walk away with his sanity intact. Gillan's departure sent shockwaves through the rock world. Deep Purple had just staged one of the most successful reunions in history, only to fracture again less than 5 years later. For fans, it was déjà vu, proof that the band's chemistry could ignite brilliance but never last. The press had a field day. Music magazines described the feud between Gillan and Blackmore as one of rock's most notorious rivalries. Headlines painted Gillan as the outspoken frontman who refused to bend, while Blackmore was cast as the temperamental genius unwilling to compromise. Inside the band, loyalties were divided. Roger Glover and John Lord, long caught between the two titans, tried to keep peace, but were exhausted by the endless clashes. Ian Pace, the band's drummer, admitted the constant tension drained the joy from performing. Meanwhile, fans took sides. Some defended Gillan, praising his courage to speak out against Blackmore's dominance. Others saw him as the disruptive force who walked away when things got tough. The debate raged in fan clubs and concert halls, further fueling the legend of Deep Purple's dysfunction. The feud had escalated from private disagreements to public spectacle. Deep Purple was once again on the edge of collapse, and for Gillan, there was no turning back. Ian Gillan's second departure from Deep Purple in 1989 left fans stunned and the music press buzzing. For years, the band had symbolized the very essence of hard rock, but now the endless feuding made them look fragile and fractured. Headlines in music magazines spoke of the collapse of giants, while fans who had celebrated the Perfect Strangers reunion just a few years earlier felt betrayed. The consequences were immediate. Without Gillan, Deep Purple brought in Joe Lynn Turner, the former Rainbow frontman who had previously worked with Blackmore. While Turner delivered polished performances, many fans rejected the lineup, insisting that without Gillan's unmistakable voice, it simply wasn't real Deep Purple. Album sales lagged compared to earlier records, and concert attendance dipped. Gillan, meanwhile, pursued solo projects and collaborations. Although he continued to perform, his absence from Deep Purple remained the central story. To many, he was still the heart and soul of the band, and his departure cast a long shadow over their reputation. For Blackmore, the feud only deepened his age as a difficult, uncompromising figure. Critics admired his talent, but noted how often his clashes with bandmates left scorched earth in their wake. Gillan's decision to leave wasn't just a personal choice. It reshaped how both he and Blackmore were seen by the public, turning their feud into one of rock's most infamous rivalries. In later years, Gillan reflected on his decision with surprising honesty. At 75, he admitted he could no longer endure the toxic atmosphere that surrounded Deep Purple in the late 1980s. "When the joy goes out of making music," he explained, "you have to step away or you destroy yourself." While the feud with Blackmore defined much of his career, Gillan never denied Blackmore's genius. He acknowledged that the guitarist's intensity drove Deep Purple's sound, even if it also drove the band apart. Yet Gillan was equally clear: working together had become impossible. The story of Ian Gillan and Deep Purple is more than just a tale of music. It is a story of ego, artistry, and the heavy cost of greatness. Together with Ritchie Blackmore, Gillan helped create songs that became the backbone of hard rock, influencing generations of musicians. But that same fiery chemistry that made the band legendary also made it unstable, fragile, and doomed to fracture. Looking back, Gillan's choice to walk away feels less like an act of defeat and more like one of survival. He was a man unwilling to let bitterness consume him, a performer who valued joy and authenticity over endless conflict. Fans may have longed for harmony between Gillan and Blackmore, but perhaps their clashing spirits were what gave Deep Purple its edge in the first place. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.